guess this is it. This is everyone for now. I would just like to let you know that MSA is bringing to you the names in the name today. And MSA is open to anyone. You don't have to have Islamic beliefs. But if you are interested in learning about Islam and seeing the way we do things, feel free to let me know so I can sign you up. Thanks.
Okay, gentlemen, ladies, I hope the voice is fine. My name is Professor Wajid. I teach in the Department of Engineering. Some of you, in fact, do take courses with me. So those of you already see me 4 times a day, 4 times a week, and this is the 5th time that you're seeing me, my condolences. Okay, it's very tragic, it's very sad, but you know, it's just what life is. It's sometimes it's bitter. And that's when you have me. So today, in fact, I wanted to talk about Allah names and the name. And what is important about Allah is that Islamic theology per se, or Islam in general, literally starts with La ilaha illallah, that there is no God except Allah. And that pretty much forms the basis of everything that is to follow. The second part is Muhammad Rasulullah, that is Muhammad is last prophet and messenger. One of the things about the word Allah is that that's pretty much most of the times what Muslims use for God. Now the word Allah, in fact, is not a foreign word. It's not an Arabic word per se. Or it's not literally exclusive for Muslims. In fact, in Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis, can anyone tell me what Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis? Have you ever heard this word, Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis? Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis is the Arabic translation, which literally means the Holy Bible. Okay? So Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis, which is the Holy Bible. If you open up the Arabic translation of the Holy Bible, you would see that, actually, okay. So a lot of times in the presentation, I'm going to point over there, because I happen to have a screen behind me, which actually tells exactly what's in front of me. So I'm going to keep pointing there, but that's where you find people at that. So if you open up Al-Kitab al-Muqaddis, which is the Arabic translation of the Bible, you would actually see that word occurring over and over and over again. In fact, Arab Christians do refer to God as Allah. Jewish Arabs do refer to God as Allah. And this is something only in which I've seen only in Laredo, that Catholics and Christians seemingly are separate entities. Actually, for Catholics and Protestants fall under Christianity. So when I say Christians in Arabia, Christians in Pakistan use the same word Allah. Christians in Malaysia use the same word Allah when they refer to God. So Allah is in fact not a foreign word. Muslims, however, make it a point. That if God has chosen a specific word for something, we would like to adopt that specific word explicitly. So if Allah chooses for himself the name Allah, you would refer to him as Allah. And there's a lot of significance behind names. Something that Eastern traditions still keep, something that Eastern traditions still follow. Because every name has a significance, has a meaning, has a history to it. A lot of that, unfortunately, and I'm from Pakistan, so I didn't get to recognize this when I was in Pakistan, but now here I do, because now I happen to have a contrast, in fact. So in Pakistan, if my name is Bilal, so I'll make sure that everybody's going to call me Bilal. Because Bilal is a name, it has a history, it has a meaning. Over here, however, names do not carry that level of significance. For instance, you would find this very normal. Somebody who has the name Thomas you would refer to him as Tom. Somebody who has the name Timothy, you would refer to him as Tim. Somebody who's William, you'd either refer to him as Will or Bill. You see that sense of sanctity within names is somehow let gone for a smaller text, because everybody seems to now text each other. So William is a long phrase, they would prefer just writing Will. So Muslims, in fact, refer to God as Allah. Now, who is Allah? Literally. So, throughout this presentation, what you have in front of you is a sheet of paper which has 99 names of Allah. And the sheet of paper that you have in front of you is this one. This one has 99 names of Allah. We haven't put the Arabic here. The left-hand side is the transliteration. So you have Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, Al-Quddus, Al-Salam, Al-Mu'min. And later on you have the English meanings of those words. In the other, in fact, and this was based on this, and one of, I should tell you, in front of you, I think every one of you has a piece of pencil, and they have these suggestions. Last time, the people who put these suggestions, we actually do read them. Okay, we actually do read these suggestions. One of the suggestions people posted last time was that I happened, and I'm going to throw Arabic words at you all the time. And one of the things that was mentioned in the suggestions is that they requested something like an equivalent. For instance, in the Bible, Adam is referred to as Adam, the Quran refers to Adam as Adam. Every time the word PBUH is assigned to it, PBUH literally means peace be upon him. So Muslims particularly, whenever they refer to Anbiya or prophets of God, they actually make a point that they always refer to any prophet, they always put the title of Hazrat first, they put the name of the prophet, and then they say alayhi salam. So they would say Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam, Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, Hazrat Ishaq alayhi salam. They would keep on throwing this phrase, Hazrat, which is the title of respect, and alayhi salam, which means peace be upon him. That is something that Muslims are somehow programmed to do, somehow they're built in from the very beginning that they just have to do that. So, one of the things which is important to highlight, and this is a good point, I'm going to tell you a small story. There was a gentleman by the name of Barar-ud-Dana Fatahi. Barar-ud-Dana Fatahi was an ascetic, and he used to live in Baghdad during the time of Khalifa Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid. Now, Barar-ud-Dana Fatahi had, for better lack of words, had an interesting way of teaching people. So one day, Barar-ud-Dana Fatahi went to the marketplace and placed 3 skulls in the marketplace. The first skull, he wrote $1 million. The second skull was $100, and the last skull was just 1 cent. So people ask them, why is it that we see 3 skulls and at the same time all of them seem to be having different prices? They look pretty much similar to us. But Barar-ud-Dana Fatahi then took a hammer and a nail. He put it on the forehead of the skull, which was priced $1 million, and hit it. The nail pierced through the forehead and went in, but it did not go out. To that skull, he priced $1 million. The other skull, which was $100, he actually put it. He repeated the same exercise. He took out a nail. He put the nail on the forehead of the $100 skull and hit it with a hammer. The skull passed through the forehead and went out the back way. He repeated the same exercise with a cent-sized skull. This time when he hit the nail, the whole skull pretty much trembled and went down. And then he said the following. When you talk to someone, make sure, and this is important for anyone who teaches, when you talk to someone, make sure they listen. If they listen, make sure they understand. If they understand, make sure they follow. If they understand, make sure they absorb it. If they absorb it, make sure they follow. Then they follow. The difference between that $1 million skull is that whenever anything that was said to that $1 million skull, the skull actually retained it all. Understood it, listened to it, understood it, and absorbed it. The thing with that $100 skull was, you hear from one end, you throw it out the other. That was the $100 skull. And the 1 cent skull was like, damn it, I'm here for the bonus points. I need those cookies. I've done those cookies. Let me get the hell out of here. Okay? So, what I want to say literally is, if you have any questions, because I'm going to keep on throwing out these phrases at you, I'm trying to explain some of them. But if you have any questions, you don't have to wait till the end. Okay, if you have any questions, just raise your hand, I'll stop, and I'll ask. And you can say whatever the question comes out to be. When you refer to Allah, and one of the things important about Allah is, for instance, He is the first, is Al-Awwal, there's nothing before Him. He is the last, there's nothing after Him. He is Al-Ala, He is the most high, and He is the most near. He begets not, nor was He begotten. In other words, He doesn't have any children, He doesn't have any parents. He is the creator, provider, all rich, all seer, all knower, one, sufficient, ascended above the throne, made the 7 skies, His grasp is over all creation. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now this is where I think it gets a little interesting. As far as Muslims are concerned, the Quran that you see outside, the Quran is the holy book for Muslims. Every chapter of the Quran is referred to as a surah. Now there's a reason I prefer the word surah over a chapter, because if you open a book, if you open any book, the first chapter is the introduction, the second chapter is hey, I'll tell you a little bit more, the third chapter is hey, here's a little bit more, the fourth chapter is hey, here's a little bit more. By the time you read the last chapter, it becomes more and more and more complicated. That's how literally every book is. Or a book of history is actually arranged in chronological order. You had first, in the history of Pakistan, you would have first that there was no Pakistan. Okay, the subcontinent region, and then 1947 something happened. There is Pakistan now. In other words, it follows the chronological order. Quran is nothing like that. And that's why the word surah for every portion of the Quran is more appropriate. Because literally, chapter 1 or surah 1 is very different from surah 2. Surah 2 is very different from surah 2. In fact, one of the easiest to memorize and one of the simplest ones actually comes towards the end of the Quran. It's not like the last chapters are the most difficult, no, they're actually one of the most easiest chapters to memorize. So, every surah of the Quran starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Ar-Rahman is a quality, is one of the names of God, is one of the names of Allah. And Ar-Rahman literally means the one who's beneficent both to the ones who are against it and the ones who are for it. So to explain to you what Ar-Rahman is, so let's say somebody knocks at my door, and this happens to be a very good friend of mine. I'm going to open the door, I'm going to invite this gentleman in, have a good tea with him, have a lovely session, and then we say goodbye. Let's say I have another friend of mine. Does anybody know Tariq Tashtosh? Let's say Tariq Tashtosh knocks at my door. Now for him, I don't even want to open the door. No, actually, Tariq Ashmas is a good friend of mine. He's actually my neighbor. So let's say, but hypothetically, let's say an enemy of mine knocked at my door. What would be my reaction? First of all, I'm going to step out the door and say, what the hell are you doing here? Okay, why have you suddenly come here? I would actually be afraid that this guy is going to do something to me. But the quality of Ar-Rahman is, and this is important to refer to this because, and that's how I can't really go through all 99 names, but I'll only go through some of them. And this is important to reflect that every surah in the Quran starts with this phrase, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, except one, which is Surah Tawbah. And there's a completely different reason for that. Ar-Rahman is the quality of Allah that He is beneficial to not only the ones who believe in Him, but rather the ones who disbelieve in Him. And one of the reasons why, and Ar-Rahim is the most merciful one to the believers on the Day of Judgment. And it's because of that reason, you will find more people amongst Muslims who have the name Abdur Rahman than the word Abdur Rahim. The word Abd is the slave. And for a Muslim, the highest status to be is Abdullah. The one who is the slave of Allah, or rather who has let his own ego completely tremble, and is now following everything that Allah has ordained him to be. Abdur Rahman is the slave of Ar-Rahman. So for a Muslim, and I'm going to tell this, I'm going to pause here and explain the rest of what a Muslim is supposed to be in a later section because it becomes important. So Allah has, as this moment to tell you, Allah has 99 names that are given to you in that sheet of paper, and what Muslims are referred to is they refer to Allah through these very names. So, but who is Allah other than His name? Who is Allah? So for that, Muslims refer to Surah Ikhlas. Surah Ikhlas, or the chapter of sincerity, literally that's what it means. That's what it translates to, the chapter on sincerity. Again, if you notice here, it starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the same thing that I showed you here, just a different way of writing it. The first ayah of the Quran, of Surah Ikhlas, is Qul huwallahu ahad. Qul huwallahu ahad literally means, Qul means to say, Huwa is He, Allah, again is the word Allah, Ahad is uniquely one. And this is actually in fact something that I realized here that is not realized in Pakistan. That's actually not found in, this is a problem that's not really found in Eastern languages. For instance, Huwa, the phrase used here is He. Now Allah, as far as Muslim belief is concerned, He is beyond gender. He's neither a male or a female. In the English language, you have three options. You have a he, you have a she, and you have an it. He has a masculine or a male connotation. She has a female connotation. It, now the good thing about it is that it is gender free, but at the same time refers to an inanimate object. So if you refer to, so you could use it, but then that gives you a problem because that necessitates that you assume that Allah is in fact an inanimate entity, and that's not the case. So, and I think it makes more sense here, because here, so then the question still remains whether you would use he or whether you would use she. Now, in the Arabic construct, in the Arabic language itself, male is different from masculine. A very good example, and I have found that recently, in Spanish, for instance, el libro, which means the book, is male, and la biblioteca, which is the library, is feminine. Now, this is a Spanish example. Even in the Spanish language, you have objects or entities which do not have to have a biological connotation. It's just that a libro is male, the book is a male, is masculine, sorry. And the library is feminine. Similarly, in Arabic language, in fact, the fact of the matter is there is no it. in Arabic language. There's only huwa, which is he, and hiya, which is she. So shajara, which is tree in Arabic, is female, is feminine. Doesn't mean that the sun, which is ash-shams, is female, is feminine. Doesn't mean that the sun, has a male part and is a male. No, the sun is literally not male. It's just how, sun is not female, but that's how the Arabic construct works. That they actually give inanimate objects a masculine or a feminine, because they either use a huwa or they use a hiya. So in terms of the Arabic language, now the question is, and it follows the laws of inertia, that the body is rest, kind of like follows the laws of inertia. The body is in rest, it remains in the state of rest unless it is moved. In Arabic language, the gender neutral, the default case is in fact masculine. It is huwa. And making it effeminate would actually have been a problem. That's why when in the very early revelations of the Quran, even the pagan Arabs didn't have a problem with this. Even the pagan Arabs knew that if you have to refer to a divine being, you would refer to him as Qul huwallahu ahad, rather than Qul hiya. So, those of you who don't know Arabic, or like for instance, at least, and the same thing in fact is in Urdu, like the local language in Pakistan, the national language is Urdu. Even in Punjabi, which is my mother tongue, you do have this sense of masculinity and feminine, and what is effeminate in inanimate objects that do not have literally a gender. But in the English language, you will always see, whenever you refer to the Quran, or whenever you open up the book, you'll always see he used for Allah, or you'll see we used for Allah. That's only because the Arabic equivalent, which is the masculine form, huwa, is the default scenario. So even before I explain Kul huwallahu ahad, even before I explain ahad, the first fact is huwa. And that's why it's important to point out here, and that's why it's important to understand that Allah actually did choose Arabic language for His revelation. Muslims do learn Arabic, learn the Quran cover to cover in its exact Arabic, and it's the only book on earth which is actually memorized cover to cover, even by those who are not Arab. So Arabic language does have this construct. So masculine is a concept, it's a grammatical concept, not necessarily a male. But in English, you still have to use the word he. Okay, that's long story short. He is what you use because English has a requirement. So you just, but not God. Allah is not male. That's what's important. So that's the first part. Second is ahad. Ahad, al-ahad is actually one of the names of Allah. Now there's a difference between a name and an attribute. And this is important to understand. A name is something we can refer to. A name that you can call out to. A name itself has many attributes. But attributes do not necessarily have names. Al-Ahad is one of the names of Allah, which means uniquely one, or the indivisible one. So Muslims have this belief that God or Allah is literally and uniquely one. You can't divide him up into 2, 3, 100, or 1,000, or 1,000,000. He is uniquely one. And that's one of his primary qualities. It's like this, you can have only one president of a country. You can't really have two. That will create a lot of problems. It's like you have a Senate which is different, Republican, and the president who's a Democrat, and you see what's going on, right? He said, Allah is uniquely one. The next quality is Allahu Samad. Allahu Samad. Now, Samad is a quality of God, quality of Allah, which literally means that As-Samad is a quality that Allah doesn't depend on anything, yet everything and anything depends on Him. That is what As-Samad means. That for Allah, everything depends on Allah, and yet He doesn't depend on anything. That's the quality of Allah. And that is what means referred to as As-Samad. Lam yalid. Lam literally means no, not. Lam yalid does not beget. Walad, and does not. Yulad, begot, is begotten, sorry. Lam yalid wa lam yulad, he neither begets not nor is begotten. Begetted, and actually if you read the Shakespearean English, it says, he neither begetteth not nor is thy begotten. They have this old phrase that they say. Beget means he doesn't produce children. He doesn't have a son or a daughter. He actually doesn't need one. Prophet Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, said, if the whole universe became like the worst, and I'm kind of like using my own words here, it's something to this effect, if the entire universe became as worst as Pharaoh's, they would not remove even an iota of the magnanimity of Allah. And if the entire creation became as noble and pure as angels, they would not increase even an iota of the magnanimity of Allah. Yes, please.
I was wondering, the idea of naming a thing is sort of an act of, it's done in a way of creation. For example, in the original text of the Hebrew,
Can you be a little
how do you feel these attributes of God in Islam differ from the other Hebraic religions? How do they view some of these things?
Okay, so the question the gentleman asked is, how does the names and attributes of God... So the question is actually a very important question. The question is, Muslims believe, and I've explained a little bit, Muslims believe in the same God that Moses alayhi salam worshipped. They believe in the same God Ibrahim alayhi salam worshipped. They believe in the same God Isaac, Noah, Jacob, Yusuf alayhi salam, Yusuf or Solomon worshipped. So even Muslims believe that Jesus worshipped the same God. Mary, Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam worshipped the same God. So in terms of the names that are found in the Old Testament and the names that are found of Allah or God in the New Testament, how does the names of Muslims, what the Quran has revealed or what the Sunnah has revealed, how do they differ? And that's actually a very good question. I'll tell you something. It's like this. So I have an attendance sheet for my students. In that attendance sheet, I actually put down the marks of every student in every exam. Now it so happened that I had to give the results, and somehow I couldn't find the sheet. It's like when you need the sheet, you just can't find it. And when you're done with it, you actually... So I actually had in my notes a written statement which include... Because the Old Testament contains a few names. The Old Testament does not contain a lot of names, and I think as far as I recall, and one of the things is I didn't bring it this time because I still do not know how to pronounce those names. But the Old Testament contains a few names, and don't hold me on this, 10, 11, 12, or 13. I'm not sure of the exact number. What I do know for sure is that whenever an exorcism is conducted by the rabbis, whenever an exorcism is conducted by the rabbis, and the general format is, they would have 10 or 11 people referring to God in one of the names. Each will be referring, would be speaking out loudly, so the person who they're exorcising hears it. So they have to hear it. So each one of them would be referring to God, and again, the Old Testament does in fact contain names. They are in either Aramaic or Hebrew language, and it's hard for me to pronounce them, because even the actual word Yehovah, they feel it's sacred, it's so sacred that you shouldn't pronounce it, you should rather write it down. But you shouldn't pronounce it. So what they do is they do have 10 or 11 names, and so every person surrounds the person whom they're exercising and refers to these names out loudly. and the person who's the rabbi then recites something else. And that's the general format for. Long story short, I don't have those names with me right now. I actually don't. I apologize for that. That's a very good question. And I can give you those, if you leave me your email, I can actually give you those names and their equivalents in the Quran. I will actually do that. I'll give you those names and give the equivalent of those names in the Quran. Unfortunately, I don't have them right now. So sorry about that. So one of the qualities of God is Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad. He neither is the children. He's not begotten anyone. He doesn't have any sons or daughters, and doesn't have any parents either. And it actually is derived from the earlier characteristics, which is he's as-samad. That literally he doesn't need anyone, and everything needs him. So having a requirement to have a son or a daughter is not required. Actually, Allah refers to in the Quran, إِذَا قَضَى فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. Whenever he decides to do something, all he says is kun, be, and fayakun, it happens. That's all that needs to be done. إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. Whenever he decides to do something, all he says be, and it becomes. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is nothing like him. There is nothing equivalent to him. So these are the four essential qualities of God, which basically Islamic theology begins from, in fact. When you say La ilaha illallah, there is no God except Allah. This is the default explanation, or the summarized explanation of who Allah literally is explained in Surah Ikhlas, that He is one, He is as-samad, He doesn't have any children, nor He doesn't have any parents, and there is nothing like Him. In Surah Hashr, Allah says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And be not like those who forget Allah, so we made them to forget themselves. Those are definitely disobedient. In Islam, and this is where it's important to understand, why Abdullah, and this is where I left off earlier, why Abdullah is the ultimate state for a Muslim to become. There is an American journalist, and I do not remember his name. There is an American journalist who once said, why is it so that amongst all the creation of God, man is the only one who doesn't believe in God, yet aspires to be one all the time? Now, amongst Muslims, the ideal scenario for a Muslim is to learn and recognize who Allah is. And rather than elevating yourself to the state of a God, the whole point for a Muslim is the whole state of being an Abdullah is, or aspiring to be Abdullah, which is the servant of Allah, is rather than elevating yourself to the status of a God, rather you should humble yourself and put the qualities of God within you. And it's because of that reason you have more people, like I said before, who have the name Abdur Rahman than who have the name Abdur Rahim, because Abdur Rahman is a quality who has the quality of Ar-Rahman, someone who is kind to not only his friends but especially to his enemies. And it is because of that one essential reason that as a Muslim, they should know literally, because if that's what your fundamental belief is, La ilaha illallah, there is no God except Allah, you should know who Allah is. You should know what His names are, what His attributes are, so you can put those qualities within you. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu was the fourth caliph of Muslims, made a statement which was very profound. He said, do not have hatred for anyone, because within everyone, you will find the quality of Allah within themselves. You will find the quality of God within yourself. So for Muslims, the whole ideal state, and that's why it refers, and be not like those who forget Allah, So He made them forget themselves. Because one of the things that Allah does, or let me put it this way, one of the consequences of not recognizing who God is that eventually you lose meaning to what you are yourself.
What else do you?
And the essential requirements, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And to Allah belongs the most beautiful names. وَلِلَّهِ أَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Asma are the names, Husna are the most beautiful names. فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. So call upon Him with those names. There is a difference between a name and an attribute. So for instance, Al-Hakim is a name, one of the names of Allah, which has meanings like, you can derive meanings like all wise, or it also has derived from the root word Hakam, which means the one who's just. Now these are attributes. One name can have multiple attributes streaming out of it. But an attribute, for instance, in Surah Fatiha, and Surah Fatiha is the opening chapter of the Quran. In Surah Fatiha, Allah tells you, and one prays this every day, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ آمِينَ. And do not make amongst those who have earned your anger and are led astray. So being angry is in fact one of the attributes which has been referred to Allah. Prophet Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, said that Allah does in fact become, Allah the Exalted does become angry. One of the things that provokes His anger is by doing things that are unlawful. But at the same time, anger being an attribute, He won't. Al-Ghadib is a name, the one who is angry. You'll never use that as a name for Allah.